Okay, we're going to get started a couple of minutes late. I apologize for that. I just got through presenting a bill next door, and it's that time of session. And we have one new bill today that we're going to hear, and then we're going to go back to two from our last meeting and take another look at those two bills. We're going to begin with House Bill 968. House Bill 968, Representative Hill. If you would, please make your way to the stand up there, and I'll get the witness mic on, and we'll hear from you regarding House Bill 968.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And this is a substitute to House Bill 968. As you notice, there's a few technical problems with the original, so this is the substitute, which, just so anybody in the audience may have a copy, it is LC 352519S. Should you have that? But,
committee members, do y'all have the 2519S? Okay. Representative?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. Today I'm going to bring before you, and I'd hate to say a simple little bill, but the House substitute for 968. This bill is really designed to do one thing and one thing only, and that is to simplify and streamline the process for selling or leasing the state properties. Today, the process is so complicated that it takes roughly 520 days to move a piece of property, and that's absolutely absurd, and that's certainly not efficient for the state of Georgia. So if you would, I'd like to go through just a couple places within the bill. I know you probably had a chance to read it, but I think I would like to point out, if you would, on lines 52 through 55, where we've dropped the requirement for having to have two appraisals. On properties under a value of $100,000, it would only be required to have one appraisal. And because low-valued properties, you can get to where you're starting to really run up your costs by doing additional appraisals. And on larger pieces, if it's being sold to another government entity, you could do without the second appraisal. And then, if you look from lines 95 through 137, we would be eliminating the very lengthy process that we have today of running each and every one of those transactions through the House and through the Senate, just like a regular bill for a sale or lease of a properties. And this would allow the State Properties Commission instead to approve it, therefore streamlining the process, but still maintaining that vital oversight by the board. And then starting over on line 156, if you'll notice, this bill also allows the hiring of a licensed real estate broker to handle transactions. And the reason for that is we've got our properties people up here in Atlanta, but if we have a small piece of property, say in Americus or Valdosta or someplace far away from Atlanta, and possibly some a little bit closer, nobody knows that local real estate market like a local licensed broker. They know which companies in their area might be looking for new office space, etc. So that is the reason for including a local licensed broker in the transactions. So as you can see, what we have done here is just really streamline the process, taking out some of the fat, some of the costs from the additional appraisals, and allowing a licensed broker to handle some of these transactions, particularly in the remote areas. And with that, what I would like to do is ask the Deputy Executive Director, Frank Smith, to come up and stand with me and answer any additional detailed questions that you might have that I might not be able to answer. We'll put Frank on the stand also. But thank you very much, and if you have any questions.
Thank you, Representative. Anybody have any questions for Representative Hill before we turn to Mr. Smith? Mr. Smith? And I was sharing with Mr. Smith before the meeting started, I was coming through town Monday evening when we're not in session at 6:30 in the evening, and he's walking. I think walking back to the office.
Yes, sir.
So I'm not impressive. Yeah, impressive. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chairman, let me mention I truly appreciate you mentioning that in front of my boss, who is sitting here in the audience.
I won't say that he said you came in at noon that day. But
Funny enough, he did. If it's all right, could I just mention a couple more comments about this piece of legislation and thank Representative Hill for doing such a good job of covering the issues of it. I want to be clear in the new process that's being proposed, still maintaining and preserving that General Assembly oversight and input. So if I can just quickly run through the new process of conveying or leasing out property. The custodial agency, so let's just say Department of Juvenile Justice has a piece of property that is surplus to them. The first step in the process is that agency declares the property surplus. Second step in the process is that agency would notify the local senator or representative that property is being surplused. Currently, how it's done is it's just kind of ad hoc. It's you guys may find out about property being surplus just by calling local counties or cities. This would put a clear process in line that the agency would be required to notify the local senator or representative. The next step would be the property would be advertised to state agencies. So I mentioned the Department of Juvenile Justice. If the Department of Juvenile Justice has property that's surplus, Department of Corrections may need that property. So the first option would be moving property from DJJ to, say, another state agency. The next step would be offering to a city or county. As a subdivision of the state, our local city and counties, which also serve the public, as the state does, would get an opportunity before the general public to use property that would serve them. I think this is a very good addition to the process that is done again on an ad hoc basis. This would put a clear process in line that cities and counties would get preferential treatment over the general public. The final step in the process would be a public advertisement for sale of the property, and then ultimately a Properties Commission board approval. And let me mention on the State Properties Commission board, the Speaker and Lieutenant Governor both have representation on that board. And Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to try to answer any questions.
members of the committee, questions? Wow. Okay, Representative Davis.
Mr. Chairman, not so much a question to Frank or the author, but just to you on where we stand with this bill. I apologize for being a few minutes late. Per our discussion earlier, were we going to move this bill, or are we going to assign it to a subcommittee, or do you know what your posture is right now?
We're not going to move the bill today. We're hearing today.
Okay.
If we need to do a subcommittee, we'll certainly do that. Representative Kidd.
Very quick question. It says that the commission may accept competitive bids. So y'all sometimes would accept bids and sometimes wouldn't accept bids?
We'd like to have the flexibility. Right now the process is we put the property out for sale. It is a sealed bid. We open the bid and either accept or reject the bid. Anybody, you guys in real estate know that negotiating is where you draw up your interest and generate the best sales price. So the may in there would say there may still be an opportunity to do a sealed bid process, but it's not going to limit the ability to do other processes like calling for best and final offers or using a broker to negotiate on the state's behalf, things like that.
You think that, if I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
For our last one, because if we're not going to vote for it, might as well get through with it. But very quickly, do you think that opens the door sometimes by not all bids being done the same way, so somebody could get some preferential treatment or something?
No, sir. With board, if there weren't a board oversight for that, and it was just somebody in an agency approving or disapproving, it could. With the board oversight, I think the protections are in place. Also involving the local legislator, representative, or senator in the front end and on the back end provides enough protection in there. I think one thing that's, and you guys again know with property, to put a one-size-fits-all is really difficult. We have forestry offices that are 2,000 square feet and like homes. We have Northwest Regional Hospital that's 140 acres of a hospital. To sell those two properties the same way isn't in the best interest.
Any other committee members?
Any other questions now, and between now and the time we have the final hearing?
Okay.
Bill, please let us know.
Okay. I'm going to Representative Green is going to chair a subcommittee with Representative Davis, Representative Buckner, and I want y'all to meet, and let's see what you can do with this, and let's try to get it back fairly quickly. We do have a meeting Tuesday, our standing committee, and if you can get it back to us before Tuesday, that would be great. That doesn't leave you but either later today or Friday or Monday to get something to get together and try to come up with 5 o'clock in the morning. Okay, and Representative Green, I'll be it's 5 o'clock Sunday morning. Okay, we'll be taking a roll on that too. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you, Representative. Representative Flood. And Representative Flood, I understand that you are in heavy demand today.
It's nice to be wanted every once in a while.
I'm receiving text that I need to get you up as quickly as possible.
I'll take a motion and we can go on.
We're passing it down. Okay, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before I begin, I'd like to thank this committee, particularly Chairman Davis and Representative Buckner for working with me. I've worked with Mr. Kim at the department to address the concerns that were brought up in our last hearing, and I believe we've come to the point where we've gotten all the input from the parties concerned and arrived at a substitute that I think makes sense for us going forward. The substitute that we're looking at is LC 211684S, like Sam, and essentially what we are doing is giving preferential treatment to products that are made in America. That's it in a nutshell. At our last hearing, the department had some concerns about 2 or 3 areas. One of those was defining what made in America was, and we left that definition to them to define. We originally asked for a 15% preference, and that preference has now been reduced to 5%. There were a couple of other minor areas where we'd asked that the department post the unavailability of products for a year, and that's been removed. And we've made this much more permissive. Mr. Chair, you and I talked about a substitute on yesterday, and with the help of Representative Buckner, we've actually made one change, and we've made a change from may to shall on line 18. Because the intent of this is to give preferential treatment. It's not to give an option of preferential treatment, but the preferential treatment is not always applied. So the permissibility to apply preferential treatment is still within the purview of the department, at a time when they've got an option of choosing a product that was made in America or a product that was made in Brazil or Canada or Taiwan or Korea or China or anywhere else that products are made, that they would give preferential treatment to those products that are made in Georgia or made in America without mandating that they do so. And ladies and gentlemen of the committee, that is the substitute to House Bill 816, the Georgia Buy American Act.
Members of the committee, anyone have questions for Representative Flood? Representative Davis.
I don't really have a question, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to thank Representative Flood for looking at some of the issues that we had in it. I think we all supported the context of the bill. We just needed some of the specifics and working with us on to get those worked out and as well with the department. So I think it's a good measure, and at the appropriate time after you have other presentations, I'll be ready to make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Green.
I too, Mr. Chairman, want to thank the committee for working this out because it's a great concept, and I was going to go ahead and ask you at the proper time too, but I'll yield to my colleague.
Any questions for Representative Flood? Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, sir.
I think we have a couple of folks that are wanting to speak on the bill. Mr. Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did want to thank Representative Flood. He's been very amenable to soliciting our input and making numerous changes to his legislation to address some of our more strident objections that I think that we had raised last week regarding the mandatory nature of the preference. And I think I haven't seen the committee sub until just now, and there has been one important change that has been made. And the reason that I wanted to come and address the committee was Representative Flood, in addressing the concerns that we had raised from making a mandatory preference to a discretionary preference. I wanted the committee members to know that the reason we would not object so much to a discretionary preference is, again, it's not mandatory. We generally don't support price preferences, and especially on something like this, where a price preference could be applied to the disadvantage of a Georgia vendor bidding against a non-Georgia vendor because of where the products may have been manufactured. I see in the committee sub, though, it has gone back to the 5% preference is mandatory, and I think that we would object to that because that would require us to award to a higher bid potentially to a non-Georgia company because they've got because of where the products are made versus a Georgia company based on where their products are made.
Representative Davis.
With all due respect, Mr. Kim, I think that's exactly what the point of the bill is,
right.
is to give preference to United States vendors over foreign vendors. Correct? It's not a Georgia versus United States or another state, Georgia versus Alabama, but it's Georgia versus China or Indonesia or South America, wherever.
I believe it could be Georgia versus other states. I mean, certainly the preference is based on the country of manufacture. Agree with that. But if, say, an Indiana company has a product with more domestic production than a Georgia vendor, and the Georgia vendor is going to sell for $100, and the Indiana company is going to sell for $105, the Indiana company is going to beat out the Georgia seller under this legislation.
I don't think so, because if they're competing against another United States vendor, there is no preference. Or am I mistaken that?
I guess I'm distinguishing between manufacturer and the actual seller of the product. In this case, you have a Georgia retailer that's submitting a bid for product X, Indiana company submitting the same bid for product X. The Indiana company makes the products in Indiana, Maine, some other state. The Georgia company makes them in another country, or buys them from a manufacturer in another country. Then the Georgia company is going to lose the bid.
Okay.
Representative Buckner.
I'm not sure I understand that, so I'm going to walk this through from my point of view. A manufacturer of a product in Georgia is trying to sell something to the state of Georgia for $15. You got 3 bids, and one came from a foreign country, and it was $10, and one came from Illinois, and it was $12.50. Who would get the bid just based on price?
If the Georgia manufacturer is, in that case, the Georgia manufacturer would.
Okay. So it would be made in America.
Right.
Okay. Just a minute. So if there was a product that was made in Georgia and a product that was made somewhere else in the United States, isn't there, and they were the same price, isn't there already on the books a tiebreaker that the Georgia producer or manufacturer gets preference? Isn't that kind of a
The
rule?
Georgia seller wins. Correct.
Georgia seller wins. So if you are given the opportunity to have a preference of 5%, not a mandate, not a requirement, but a preference of 5% to any manufacturer in the United States, why doesn't that increase the chances for Georgia to win the bid every time?
I guess the first thing I would say is the preference for 5%. It is a mandate. I mean, the preference just means you add $5 or 5% to the price of the bid if the products are made in the United States. I think certainly products made in Georgia are products made in the United States. So I think that's kind of, that to me, that's a non-issue. What I'm thinking about is that so many of the companies that sell to the state, they're selling products. They're not actually manufacturing the products that they sell. Some Georgia companies, they may buy products that are a mix of domestic and foreign production. Other out-of-state companies may also sell products that are a mix of domestic or foreign production. And it's in that situation where the seller of the product is buying you've got a Georgia seller who buys from a manufacturer versus a non-Georgia seller that buys from a manufacturer. You can have situations there where the Georgia seller is going to lose based on where their supplier sources their products from.
Let me see if I can help with this. Georgia company selling a product from overseas for $100 versus an Indiana company selling an American-made product for $105. This would require you to buy the Indiana company's product because it's made in America.
Yes.
So the Georgia company is now being they're being punished by not being awarded that contract based on that. That's what you're telling us.
Yes.
Representative Kidd.
Understanding, but I might be more confused now than I was a while ago. It probably doesn't take much. But if the product is made in the United States and similar product is made outside the United States, regardless who the seller is, that the preference goes to the manufacturer of the one made in the United States. regarding not even irrespective of the price.
Correct.
Because the price of what's made overseas might be the manufactured cost of $1, and the product made in the United States might be $1.25. The seller of both products would be in the United States, the retailer or the wholesaler. So the preference would go to the manufacturer of the product at $1.25, and not necessarily be the lowest bidder.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
To be clear, sometimes the Georgia company can be the beneficiary under this legislation. Sometimes the Georgia company, who's the low bidder, can lose under this legislation. Again, the preference is not given based on the residency of the vendor doing business with the state. The preference is given based on the source of manufacture, who may or may not have a contract with the state.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, it seems like we've confused the whole situation here, but basically at the end of the day, if a product's made in America, it's going to have an advantage on a product that's not made in America, correct?
Correct.
So it's going to help the American manufacturers.
Correct.
Okay. That's the intent of the bill. The bigger concern I have right now is that your comment is that the department doesn't like preferences. And what we're telling you with this piece of legislation is that the General Assembly wants you to take preferences, both on Georgia companies when it's interstate competition, and then on American companies when it's international competition. That's what we're trying to tell you.
And we are certainly going to do what the law says, and that's why we're weighing in on this, because right now a Georgia company doesn't get the benefit of preference against the non-Georgia company.
Right. And the last thing is the other comment you made about the bill says shall, not may.
Correct.
I think Representative Flood, are you going to clear that up for us on the lines 18 and line 20 and the difference between the shall and the may on those two lines? All right, thank you. When he comes back up there, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Kidd.
One very quick follow-up, and I want to ask another one. So this really pertains to what's made in the United States, not necessarily the cost. Well, I had $1 and $1.25 a while ago. Let's do it differently. The product made overseas, the wholesale unit cost would be $1, and the product made in the United States, the manufacturing cost might be $5. And does this language mean you have to purchase the one that was made in the United States, irrespective of the cost factor being so much different?
No, sir.
Pardon?
No, sir.
So
It's
you
5%.
Okay.
Mr. Kim, did I understand you correctly? We do not have a preferential. We don't have a preference for Georgia companies unless there's a tie.
Correct. It's all things being equal, the Georgia company gets the nod. Right now, the only preference that Georgia companies get is what's called a reciprocal preference, and so that so for example, if another state gives a price preference to their home bidders, when I'm going to pick Alabama as an example just for illustrative purposes. If Alabama gives a 5% price preference to Alabama bidders on Alabama government work, when that Alabama company comes to Georgia and bids, if they're the low bidder, they're going to get assessed a 5% penalty by us to retaliate for the disadvantage that Georgia companies have in doing business with Alabama. That's the only kind of a preference that we've got, other than all things being equal.
Members of the committee, any more questions? Thank you, Mr. Kim. Representative Flood, if you could excuse yourself and go vote, and join us in just a few moments. We are going to pause on consideration of your bill. But after you complete your duties next door, come back and see us. Okay. We're gonna set this one aside for just a few minutes and take it back up. Sometimes we have to do those things in the General Assembly when there's a pressing matter. Representative Hatchett, if you'd like to come, we'll go ahead and take your bill up, and then we'll get back to Representative Flood's in just a few minutes.
Chairman Hill, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to come back before you with House Bill 863. We've had several different mini meetings with people and the questions we had from the previous presentation, and just to go over what this bill does, because I think some of you were not here when I came last time, is it increases the no bid limit for spending from state agencies from $5,000 to $25,000. The Department of Administrative Services will still have mandatory contracts in place. The bill also defines a small business. When the Department of Administrative Services does choose to use a preference for a Georgia small business, defines it as a company that has less than 500 employees and or less than $50 million in gross revenue. And one other change in the bill is with the Purchasing Advisory Council, the title of Technical College of Georgia is made correct. That being said, that's how we did. We did add one portion of in the bill, and I didn't go. The substitute we're reading from is LC 362079 ECS. Sorry, I didn't do that.
Representative Hatchett, if you could have a seat while we round up that LC number. We are having fun. Hey, let me tell you, this morning my day started this way with all lanes of the interstate blocked in my commute to a 7:30 legislative briefing that I was participating in as a panelist. So by 6 o'clock this morning, I was already emailing folks that I was going to be late today. So it's been that kind of day for me all day. Representative Flood, good job getting over there and getting the vote cast quickly and making it back.
Well, thank you again, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate the committee's indulgence. Let me just, if you would follow me through, try to clarify some of Mr. Kim's concerns. The first place that you see the word shall is on line 18. That really refers to the level of the preference. It doesn't require the state to give a preference. It just says the preference will be 5%. If you look at line 20, the purchasing agency may promote the purchase of and give preference to assembled products, materials, goods, equipment. So it doesn't mandate. It says that the preference will be 5%, but it doesn't have to be applied. And then it said, on line 22, procure products made in the United States may be specified in purchase unless the purchasing agency determines that it's not available in quantities. And then the line 27, it just says that the vendor shall certify that the products are made in the United States. And in 32, it says that there's no preference shall be granted if it violates any contract or law agreement that that exists with the United States. So the only place that shall is really used, that just want to clarify, is that the preference shall be 5% as opposed to 15 or 20 or 2 or 1 or 17. It shall be 5.
Ms. Long, can you pull your microphone over for us?
If it would aid the committee's understanding, I can add language that says in cases where preference is given, comma, a preference of 5% shall be provided. If that might help clarify what their intent is.
If you could work on getting that corrected, we'll continue discussing while you're working on that. Other members of the committee, questions? Representative Davis.
Would that satisfy your concerns, Mr. Kim? What she said, and I believe she's writing it over there right now, but basically that the preference shall be 5% when a preference is given.
Mr. Kim, if you could come back.
When we get the final language on that, we'll address it. And if we can make that clear that it is a optional thing, and obviously you guys will get the intent of what we're trying to say, that when possible, we want you to use the preferences. And even though we don't give a Georgia preference, quote unquote, give a percentage, they do actually get a preference, because if all things are equal, you're going to go with the Georgia, which is by definition a preference.
Right.
Right?
Right, but not a
Okay.
price preference.
And I think one of the key things to consider here is the fact that we do not offer a price preference on Georgia companies. So we're offering, if we adopt this, we're offering something to American-made products, regardless of the state, that we're not offering to our Georgia companies. Just a comment. Representative Butler.
Would it, if we were to say in places where preference is given, a preference of no more than 5%, that means that there's just a slight difference in the price we're going to go with American, and we haven't changed anything. If it's a 1% difference, whatever, I mean, would that help you?
Yeah, certainly I think that from a price point of view, that certainly addresses that objection. Their bidders may raise the question, what are the rules of the game? When is the preference going to be given? When is it not?
I'm just having difficulty because for me it's so simple. It's like, you know, if the prices are close and one's made in America and one's made somewhere else, we're going with the one that's made in America. And I don't know why we can't just write that in a bill and it be okay with everybody, but I'm struggling. I'm trying to figure out how we can put those words on a piece of paper that will work. And I know how your job must be difficult. I don't know how to. I wish you could tell us exactly what you need.
Representative Kidd.
I said when the 5% will make a difference. But if the price between the Alabama product and the Georgia product is substantially more than 5% difference, even the 5% is not going to bring the Georgia product down to a competitive price with one made somewhere else. And they're still going to buy the one cheaper than the 5% fee if it's that much cheaper. Is that not correct? Y'all like I am.
I certainly think that, I think we've a couple of you have already touched on this. Certainly sometimes a Georgia company can benefit from this legislation if the source of manufacture is the United States. There are other times when a Georgia company, who is the low bidder, they may suffer, but if their source of manufacture is another country. I think one of the big concerns is that under this legislation, it is possible for a Georgia company to lose to a higher price bid to a company from another state, as long as everyone understands that.
Representative Davis.
All right, and this will be my last time speaking on it, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Representative Buckner. This is so simple and it's being made so complicated. At the end of the day, if we have a manufacturing job in America or a company that sells a product, that company pays corporate taxes. The person that was unemployed is employed, is paying personal income taxes. They're paying sales taxes. They're paying energy taxes. And, there is a benefit for using Georgia companies. There's a benefit for using American companies. Every day we're losing manufacturing jobs overseas. And that's what the intent and where we're going is. We're going to say that we're going to try and help American companies. We're going to try and help Georgia companies protect our own jobs and protect our own tax base. So if it's 5% and we've got all these other different levels of taxation that's in there, it's actually a benefit for us to purchase the products made in America and made in Georgia. And that's where we're going with this. And I hope that the department is hearing us loud and clear that we want you to start giving preference to Georgia and American companies. If we don't get anything, even if the bill doesn't finally pass, I hope you're hearing us loud and clear on that.
We are, and I think that you'll see that when Representative Hatchett addresses his legislation.
Okay, I think we have someone else that wants to speak on the bill. Mr. Kim, Representative Flood, we'll give you a chance in just a minute, Representative Flood, to come back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'm Brandon Hembry with Massey Bowers and Hembry, and I'm actually here wearing 3 hats today. And I've been authorized to speak on behalf of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce and the Technology Association of Georgia in opposition to this bill. Both associations have taken up the bill and have debated the legislation and have serious concerns about the impact that it can have on businesses that compete through the Georgia procurement process. Many of you may know that I at one time was at DOAS, and it was many, many years ago, and I have since gone out, and part of my business is to help companies navigate the procurement process here at state and local levels of government in Georgia. And so I have a tremendous amount of experience with the fact that it can be very cumbersome in its current state. It's a challenge for vendors to even to navigate the procurement process, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I can just sense within this committee a tremendous amount of confusion about how this will operate. And I can tell you that if you're a vendor and you have to deal with this type of preference in a bid process, it's even more confusing and frustrating. The goal should be to make the procurement process less burdensome for businesses that try to compete for government contracts. The issue that we have is the how do you define made in America, the 50%, 51%, and that's impossible. As many of you know, we have Georgia vendors that sell Toyotas to government entities. We have Georgia companies that sell Dell computers to government entities. Dell computers are made in America. They're assembled in Texas and North Carolina, but a majority of the components that go into that computer are not made in America. And so it's just going to be a tremendous challenge for bidders that are going through this type of preference process. In general, the Technology Association of Georgia and the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, we just don't agree with preferences. We believe that the free market should dictate the outcome of bid processes. That's the best thing for the business community, and it's the best thing for government entities because they're getting the best cost out of the process if they're letting the free market operate. And so those are my statements. I was itching to just get up and talk and kind of give you the perspective of the business community on these issues.
Representative Buckner.
I just wanted to let you know that in the version that we're working off of, the 51% is gone, so
Okay,
they don't
I
have to worry
apologize.
about
I have
that.
not seen the substitute version.
And then the other thing that I wanted to verify, you said that you are working for the Georgia Chamber of Commerce.
No, ma'am, I can give you more clarification. Georgia Chamber of Commerce, we have a number of committees that the Georgia Chamber takes positions on bills. I'm vice chairman of the Business and Industry Committee. We took this bill up last week, had a large crowd of vendors that do business here in Georgia that are Georgia Chamber members, and we debated the bill, and quite honestly, we're going to leave it under consideration, but there was a tremendous amount of concern about it, so we took an opposed position.
I guess I just wanted to know, I thought that the Georgia Chamber of Commerce had as its goal to promote Georgia businesses.
Yes, ma'am, this does not promote Georgia businesses.
So this would not promote Georgia businesses to have an opportunity to sell their manufactured goods to the state.
I think Joe presented a scenario to you where a Georgia business can actually be handicapped through this process.
I heard him say that for distributors, but not for manufacturers.
Well, I mean, correct.
I mean, I'm not trying to be difficult, but I thought I heard him say that if it was a Georgia company that was distributing products made overseas, that they would be at a disadvantage. But if it was a Georgia manufacturer, then they would actually get preference.
You're right, ma'am. There's a difference between manufacturers and distributors.
Okay. And that could be a problem with the bill. I just wanted to make
sure.
We
have manufacturers that may sell directly to the state, but we've got a lot of distributors that sell directly. And those distributors, they're businesses here in Georgia as well.
As well. I
Yes, ma'am.
understand. I'm really not trying to be
Yes, ma'am.
confrontational. I just want to make that clarification.
I understand. Yes, ma'am.
Representative Chokas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate the Georgia Chamber of Commerce and what they do in promoting Georgia business. Are you now proposing that y'all going to change y'all's name from Georgia Chamber of Commerce to the United States Chamber of Commerce, since y'all represent businesses throughout the country?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not. Obviously, we disagree philosophically. The Georgia Chamber of Commerce is the Georgia Chamber of Commerce. We have many members, some that are distributors, some that are Georgia manufacturers. The issue here is not that issue. The issue here is giving a preference. That's the issue. Preference is, I can't give you a scenario where a preference works in a bid process. It makes things a lot more complicated. I guess maybe I don't really understand it.
Well, the problem that the way I understand it is that, and I respect the fact that you represent distributors as well as manufacturers, and I think that that's important because they are employers as well. And what my request would be is that you get with the author and y'all find some common ground.
Mr. Chairman, it would be a challenge to find common ground on the preference when philosophically you're as a business community you're opposed to any type of preference.
You don't feel that at all that you should represent. I'm talking about even if you expand this to be manufacturers and or distributors, or if the distributor represents Georgia-made products and other products. You don't think that you could find some common ground somewhere?
Representative Chuck, I think I should clarify. I have three hats on today. My purpose in bringing up the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, because I was asked to express the fact that we oppose. That there may be a philosophical opinion that I have that might differ from the Georgia Chamber of Commerce. So I need to be careful how if I answer the question, if I'm answering on behalf of just myself, or I guess it's probably a challenge to wear three hats all at one time. So I apologize. If you could ask the question again, I'll be happy to answer.
Well, I think that there should be some areas where y'all could agree and find some type of compromise and come back with something that would work and that would promote Georgia business within the state of Georgia.
But this is not a bill about Georgia business. This is a bill about products that are made overseas. I don't know quite where.
Thank you.
Representative Buckner.
It seems to me that there are some issues that have come before us in the past, and there's actually one before us right now in this legislative session. For example, to exempt the energy taxes for our manufacturers in Georgia, which is a pretty good hit to the budget of the state of Georgia. Is that not some kind of preference that we give to Georgia businesses if we exempt them from having to pay that tax?
No, ma'am.
That's not a preference to our Georgia manufacturers to keep them from having to pay some type tax?
Those, in competition with who? You're giving them to all manufacturers. You're giving the sales tax exemption to all manufacturers in Georgia. In Georgia. Other states give the same.
I think that sometimes when we, I'm struggling with this. I'm not trying to be difficult, but I think we give businesses preferences to do their work, to make things, And now we're trying to give a preference to our state government to buy the things that are made in our state, and I'm having trouble trying to figure out how there's a problem with that. I just don't understand it. I'm not trying to be dense.
The bill's not a preference for things manufactured in the state of Georgia, although if they are manufactured in the state of Georgia, this is a bill dealing with products that are made overseas. And my point earlier was we've got a tremendous amount of Georgia distributors that sell products that are not made in Georgia and that are not made in the U.S. And that has a tremendous impact on their business.
I don't know how to ask it. I'll just quit. I'll give up.
Representative Chokas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I don't want to belay this issue any longer because obviously I value y'all's time, and it may be in the best interest of everyone concerned and that we table this motion at this time and re-examine it. My hope was that we could put several of the parties together and maybe find some type of compromise. And I'm hoping that if we table that, we'll still be able to do this. So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we table this motion.
I think one thing that's become evident this afternoon is that all of us would like to do something, and we're not sure what all the consequences of trying to do this are going to be and how we can work it all out and how we can make it happen within the department and how we can do it in a fair way and how we can do it where we're protecting Georgia businesses, because ultimately this doesn't protect Georgia businesses. This protects American-made products that would possibly put a Georgia business in a position of losing a bid, even though they're the low bid, to a company out of state that has American-made products. So I think there's a lot of moving parts here that we're struggling to get our hands around. We still have it's 5 minutes to 4, and we still have another bill that we need to do. And this, as much as we've had conversation on this, I don't think we've made any progress with it. Let's do this. We have a motion to table. I have no problem if we table this. I have no problem getting the same folks that were working on it to continue working on it. So if we can, Representative Flood.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for considering doing an alternative as opposed to just killing the bill. But I'll just say this, that Mr. Hembry and his objections were the first that I've heard from him or anyone from his organizations relative to their posture on the bill. We do give preferences. We do it all the time. All the tax exemptions that we've gone for the last 10 years that I've been here, we've given tax exemptions to specific companies. So the notion that we don't give preferences is ludicrous to me. We are trying to find a solution to help create jobs in manufacturing that are jobs in the United States. And I understand there could be opposition, but the opposition that I've heard so far has been nebulous at best. I'm more than willing to work with interested parties to resolve the issues. But for Mr. Hembry to come before this committee today without ever even acknowledging that he had concerns is disconcerting to me. And I just wanted to make sure the committee was aware that this was not anything that we were aware of, because we could have addressed some of his concerns possibly if we'd had an opportunity to do so.
Let's thank you, Representative Flood. I appreciate that. Let's, Mr. Hembry, I want you to get a copy of the sub that we're working off right now, and I would like for you to have some conversations with Representative Flood. We have 3 or 4 on the committee that work to get to this substitute. Let's keep working. Let's see what we can do to where if we can get a bill that'll do what our intentions are without complicating things too much in the procurement process, then I think all of us are for helping promote American manufacturing. We can't do it at the expense of Georgia companies. We got to be careful about that. We don't want to put the department at risk by giving preference with one bid and then a company coming back in another bid and saying, hey, you gave preference here, I didn't get preference there, opening up some opportunities there of discrimination and charge of discrimination. So let's keep working on this. Let's see what we can do. Representative Flood, thank you. I know you've been working hard. Thank you for that. We're going to keep working and see what we can come up with. For time's sake today, we need to move on. Thank you so much. Representative Hatchett.
Okay, I apologize for not having the substitute in your hands.
I think we have it now, and I think,
Okay.
Representative Hatchett, I think if you could go quickly, that would be helpful.
All right, it is LC 36-2079
Since we
ECS.
spent
Like I said earlier, it raises the no bid cap from 5,000 to 25,000. We do define small business as a business that has been here a year and domiciled here, which means it's a fixture, it's set up to do business, it's been doing business, or a business has been here less than a year that does not, and it does not include businesses that uses a post office box, a site trailer, or a temporary structure. And we did include on line 54 a leased private mailbox, and these are companies that are not affiliated with the post office but have boxes where people receive their mail. And we did stay after a lot of discussion. We talked with the University of Georgia and Georgia Tech about how they define small business, and they do define it as 500 people or less, 500 employees or less, and we include Georgia as a small business as 500 employees or less and $50 million or less in revenue, gross revenue.
Thank you, Representative, and I know you've worked with several members on the committee, and the government staff has as well, and I appreciate that work. And I think we're where we need to be probably. Any members of the committee have any questions? Representative Green.
Mr. Chairman, at the proper time, I'd like to make a motion.
This is the appropriate time.
Thank you. I move do pass as to the committee substitute to House Bill 968.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
It's House Bill 863.
Oh, I beg your
House Bill
pardon.
863,
Thank you.
LC number 36-2079 ECS. Motion do pass. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Thank you, Mr.
Good job,
Chairman and
Representative
committee.
Hatchett.
Thank you. Going to bring
Meeting
jobs
adjourned.
to Georgia.